Hey guys, well, we're out in the woods, and like something's new there, but I always just feel like I have to introduce you to the water's right there, a little low tide, so we got a little mound sticking up out of the water. All right, so today was a beautiful day, and it started to get windy, and I had some spots where I was hiking, riding my bike mostly today, but where the clouds and the sky were just beautiful. And anyway, thought about doing something there, but I was on my bike and just kept going. But in my mind, I felt a lot of really tuned in, tapped in, turned on, positive vibes, sensing the perfection of everything around me, conscious of my breath, and that's that. But I've thought about how I got on this journey, I don't know, really all my life really, but a few years ago I sort of doubled down, and then last year I tripled down, and now we're in the midst of this coronavirus. So I've been through a lot of struggles before. I went through a bankruptcy one time years ago, and that was really tough. And I'd been through losing all my money many times before that. But you just don't, not much to prepare you for that, you know? It's like drags out over a year. It's just sort of stressful on stressful on stressful. And I knew when I was on it, it's like I said, it's like riding a roller coaster. I come down off the hill and I'm like, okay, and I catch my breath very quickly. And I regroup and I'm like, that's all good, that's all good. And, but I always felt like I want to get to the point where I'm coming down the roller coaster where something's falling apart in my world and I'm still tuned in, tapped in, turned on. I can tune in, tap in, turn on at the bottom of the crest of the hill pretty quickly, probably more quickly than most people. I see people go up the next hill and down, and you talk about an event, 8 years ago, and they talk about it like it happened yesterday, and they've got all the nasty details, and they've got the whole story down, and they own it. It's part of them, the trauma of what they went through once when they went down on the roller coaster. And, again, for me, these are life events, the roller coaster. But to stay tuned in, tapped in, turned on, stay grounded, stay whatever you want to call it, on the way while falling off the edge on the roller coaster, it takes a little bit more oomph. So I'm having to double down a lot. And thank goodness that this roller coaster drop off that's happening now has got everybody pulled away, because I really need my space. It's tricky. Anyway, and I'm still on my journey. I was on the same journey. My life has not really changed, other than I've pulled back from, I have much, much less contact with other people. But that was happening anyway. So just kind of weird. Synchronicities, I think, is one of the points I wanted to get to. Synchronicities in life just start really happening when you get tuned in, tapped in, turned on. And giving yourself that time and that sense of, I have a child version of myself living in me, that all my aggressive nastiness or things I don't want to exhibit to the world is really just me protecting that child. And if I become more loving and more accepting and more nurturing and patient with that inner child, then he'll come out. And that child really wants to be literally like a child, wants to do what it wants to do at its own pace, in its own way, without observation. And it wants to experience what it wants to experience. That's kind of part of doing, really. But I feel like I can't give enough enough details to the softness at which you have to deal with your inner child. And anyway, so all our braces, like, I need more money, I need more stuff, I need people to take care of my health, I need all these different things, is really you just protecting your inner child. And I'm going back to my roller coaster analogy. When you're riding the roller coaster, life, you got to go for the big hills, and you're going to have some drop-offs. But as you drop off and come up the next one, you start to be aware of it. You repaint past big drop-offs, struggles in your life, things that seemed like, oh, that's not what I want to do again. That was when my inner child sort of shut down and climbed in and said, the world is tough out there, and they're not nice to me. No one wants to hear my opinion anymore. Nobody wants me to be real. I just want to go out, play, do what I want to do, be with who I want to be with, and not do things I don't want to do. And a little bit of things I don't want to do, I can handle. But too much of things I don't want to do, you know, when I was, my little Danny body would want to just cry. That's what I did when I was a kid, you know. Not the version I drag with me now. He doesn't cry very often, but sometimes. Because 3 to 5 year olds don't cry much. But anyway, so when I'm walking with, in my life now, more conscious of this child version of myself, and sometimes things come up that would maybe deal with more the teenager adult version of myself, but they're all part of me, and I need to be patient with him. And speaking nicely is a big part of it. And it needs to be a yes language. Yes to the outside world I talked about. I really can't emphasize that enough. Just being the yes vibration to what comes your way and to what, I feel like I'm talking to this little bit of water here. Being yes to everything that comes your way it's really, that's kind of I think the deepest thing you can take with you. Because that sort of says to my inner self, you know, yes to me as well. Yes to what I want to do. Yes to who I want to be. And that's very freeing for your inner child. That's going to kind of open the door at least. Then he just doesn't want, you know, he needs to be sort of taken care of slowly, and the relationship's got to develop again. You had a relationship. He was the one in charge when you were a kid, and then somehow we've put him away and said, you know, deal with it. It's a scary world out there. I'm taking care of this. I'm going to stay so busy we won't even have to talk about any of the problems and the stresses and things like that. So it's a little bit tricky when you spend more time with yourself and you take more time to focus on your moment, your truth, your sense of who you are. Then you get more sensitive, and more sensitive means more triggers. So things just catch you, and you're just like, whoo, and you're just dodging and weaving and loving on yourself more and going, ooh, and then you get more sensitive, and you're not so much. That's kind of that finesse of the love bomb. You can't really throw a love bomb on somebody properly if you don't sort of know what it feels like to give them to yourself. So sometimes we think a love bomb, but it's really, I want you to be this. I want you to be that. I like what I see when you're more like this. You know, that type of thing. It's a little bit of steering. Because if you're steering yourself and saying, there's a way to be, watch out for this, watch out for that, then you're going to be steering other people. And the last thing we and me and anybody in my inner child needs is somebody to be saying, watch out for this and don't do that. That's totally the opposite energy of what a 3 to 5 year old version of myself would want to do on the planet, want to experience. So that yes to the roller coaster ride, yes to the experience, yes to the how it helps you to grow, yes how it makes you sympathetic to other people who are on the roller coaster, yes it helps with everything. So the point that I wanted to integrate into today is, because we've talked about the yes and we've talked about the inner child, but today was the thought of shoot, now it escaped me. Da-da-da. Well, this is when I would normally have somebody else, and I said, now what was I talking about again? What am I going to do, go back in the video? So, shoot. My inner child, tuned in, tapped in, turned on, of course. That's what I got to do. Back to my breath. Tuned in, tapped in, turned on. Thinking about the roller coaster. Thinking about my inner child. Thinking about the love I feel for everyone around me and how my inner child wants to come out and express that and be that love. But it's a scary world out there. I've got to make sure I'm giving him protection and that I'm not subjecting him to such harsh things. And you never know when people throw out stuff about, you know, it's like, why, when I don't watch the news or anything, why do I know there was a riot? You know, I'm out here in the woods, I hear people talking about it. It's like you know, you looked at that sort of peaceful demonstration like, hey, and that is bad. You know, there's definitely some anger and wanting to change other vibration out there. There's some stressed out people who, you know, want to take a whatever. They just there's This is a tricky transformation. So life is tricky, you know? But anyhow, so certainly, you know, that process needs to play itself out. But there was some demonstration, there was some protest, as there should be for sure. And there is a lot of that hatred of other people, and it does show up, and it's good that we have cameras now, so we're seeing this. So, you know, it's a reality, and it's just an as is. I mean, it's a what is. And I'm not saying what is like whatever, but it's like, didn't you see that coming? Don't you know it's coming? Don't you know we're brewing that? Don't you know we're ignoring all these children still today who are going to turn into the teenager who's hated by the adults and all that kind of stuff? But what about me as an adult and anyone else who's in my age bracket? They say if you're 50 years old, I'm 56, so, but 50 years old, you're like halfway done with your life, because our life expectancies probably grow as we grow. And a whole lot of things are going to change in the second 50 years of my life, 50-some years, than the first one. It's going to be changing quickly. So I got to work on my tuned in, tapped in, turned on ability to be present and flexible and easy, and let the world sort of bring what it's bringing, because a lot of changes are going to be happening. And, you know, this coronavirus is just like the tip. It's just a little bit of like a, you know, slap in the back of the head. That's all I can come up with. I would say that's what it feels like. You know, let's take that slap in the back of the head and say, you know what, let's get focused on what's really important here. There's an awful lot of the population that's heading into use. Watching the population sort of, certain people sort of fall off the edge of the cliff, and you want to run to the edge of the cliff and hold them all back. It's like, no, there's a big conveyor belt headed to that cliff. There's, you know, let's hatch out some happy people that when you get to the edge of the, when you get ready to fall over the cliff, what's supposed to happen, you're supposed to fly away like a butterfly. But we're raising the kids in a way that's kind of tricky, and they're not seeing the butterfly take off. But here's an interesting little tip, and or just a point. They have on Pokemon for kids, and all kinds of different shows for kids and stuff. They're talking about the alternate universes creating our galaxy and all that type of stuff, without all the fear stuff. So they're slipping them in on the kids. We're gonna birth up another generation that have a much different paradigm than we have. But let's change our paradigm as we're getting older, so we can relate to the younger. The older people often have trouble relating to the young. If you can relate to them, when you find an old person who does relate, they're very inspirational and very helpful and very included and very part of the movement of time and generations. But if you've got your little paradigm of, I need to fix something out there, and the world's a mess and the youth are jerks, you know, there's a lot of that out there. So if that's where your paradigm is, then yeah, you're in for a world of hurt. So you know, get on the program. Let's get tuned in, tapped in, turned on to the higher collective consciousness, to who you really are. And you bob up and you start to get clarity, and you get above that magical point where you can all of a sudden see the perfection of everything around you, and you just let go and say, you know what? Let things go the direction they go. Trusting that I have a dream of a vision of a loving place where your inner child doesn't need to be sort of compartmentalized so deep that we've got 13 masks we have to take off before the real me can shine out and give the flower that I came here to be, the gift to the world. So, but that's everybody. Everybody came here for something special, not this. So anyway, I'm beating 15 minutes again. 14 minutes and 9 seconds. I'm out of here. All right, guys. Well, we got time for a love you and a love bomb. I think we're still putting love bombs on ourselves. I really want to get people really locked down on the fact that that's an uncomfortable thing. It's like, nurture on yourself. Be supportive of yourself. Talk nicely to yourself. Say yes to whatever's coming your way. And be gentle with yourself and say, we're going to be yes to things that are coming our way, and not have fearful things. We're going to hold ideas that we didn't really think made sense, but we're going to hold them and see if they don't start to integrate and mix into my world and sort of make sense. And then it'll give you that inner appreciation for yourself, will give you the strength to sort of change some things in your life. And it's good to mix everything up. Whatever you're doing, if it's not putting you in the most positive, vibrant, tuned in, tapped in, turned on love vibration, and change things up. It's definitely a time to change things up. So anyway, all right, guys, love you. Now it's 15 minutes and 10 seconds. See you tomorrow.